Yeah, I actually went last year. Major Laser. And he was brilliant.
Right,
I mean, I do.
Right.
He had a lot of lasers, but I mean, it was, which is what I expected.
Welcome to Cloud Realities, an original podcast from Capgemini. I'm Dave Chapman.
And I'm Rob Kernahan.
And we are on day 3 of AWS reInvent 2024. We are back on the Expo floor. So the last couple of days we have been lucky enough to just be sequestered in the Yardbird, and it's been very pleasant. But we've come back to our origins. Back on the Expo floor. What do you think?
Back to it's, you know what? It's big, it's scaled, it's energetic, lots of cool stuff. It's freezing.
It is freezing.
I had to do star jumps with Marcel earlier to keep my body temperature up. It's ridiculous.
Walked out of the house this morning as well in only a t-shirt, which is
sunny.
Absurd of me. Like, it really is legitimately cold. But yeah, I don't know whether it is actually bigger, but it sort of feels bigger. Some of the booths are absolutely massive this year.
And there's some cool stuff as well. So the observation I've made is that where last year was some AI there, what we're seeing is the realization of AI. A lot of the vendors and the partners are showing examples of how they've deployed it. So what we're moving into that period where it's actually getting applied.
You know, my favorite one was?
Go on, him.
That little creature.
Oh, that drew you.
Yeah.
It was very cool, wasn't it? Converged technology,
Absolutely
Dave.
amazing.
Converged.
So it was looked like a little sort of goblin.
Like a Yoda.
Yeah, like a Yoda. And he was sitting on a chair, and you could sit opposite him. You would, first of all, make eye contact with him, and his eyes would track you around. So it had a very sort of emotive interface. You talk to him, and it was sort of a GPT that was kind of allowing you to just sort of natural language chat with him. He would then take the sort of information you wanted about your drawing, use that to do a ChatGPT search, then to sort of create an image.
Yeah.
He then drew that image
with his hands,
using his little
printer,
robot,
the robotic hand drawing like a human.
There was something very compelling about the convergence, Robert.
It was, and it's a lovely sort of has a conversation, merges the conversation with a picture of you, and then does a line drawing by hand. It's a really nice sort of animatronic style interaction.
Quite spectacular. So we spoke to the company, and they're going to come and join us on the podcast probably next year.
Breaking the digital wall.
What?
Breaking the digital wall.
What does that mean?
It means you're making digital like human and interaction. You know when they say in the film, break the fourth wall?
Yes.
Breaking the digital wall.
Did you make that up?
No, it's a phrase they use, Dave. It's a thing that's very difficult. It's an industry
phrase. That phrase,
Marcel?
Never.
Well, you two obviously don't pay any attention. I learnt it about an hour and a half ago.
I tell you what.
I'm taking moral superiority on this one.
I've got a story about Rob's moral superiority. Marcel, would you like to hear it?
Yeah, please.
So Marcel and I were stood in the bar of the Yardbird, along with, a number of hundred other people.
Oh, no, don't tell me this one.
And all of a sudden, what happened, Marcel?
I can't remember anymore.
The lights went out, no?
Oh, the lights. Yeah.
So everyone's like, there's a gasp went out across the room. And
everything went in silence.
Went
Everybody looked at each other.
Yeah, and everyone wondered what was going on.
Yeah.
The staff all started to scurry about.
People running to a sort of a panel with all kinds of switches on it.
So Marcel and I, we better go back into the room where we're doing the podcast. Rob is stood by the light switches going, look, I can dim the lights.
Master control panel.
I honestly thought it was just for the room. I was playing about with dark, high, low, off, trying to get some mood lighting going.
Oh my God, and he had that look at his little face expression. Right, anyway, look, Vogels has been on stage today. What's he been on about, Rob?
It's very basic, Dave. Removing the burden of complexity. So a simple thing to say, but a difficult thing to do. And he has called it simplexity. which is a sort of understanding complexity and dealing with it in the right way. He talks about cell-based approaches. What was nice about the talk was it was acknowledging the need for a sort of the right operating model over the top of the technology, thinking about the efficiency of getting to the outcome and it all coming together. So this is what is the glue that binds it all together. So he went through that a lot and describing as organizations might build something that seems simple at the beginning, but when you scale it, that complexity hurts you, it slows you down, it drags you into the mud. So taking that thought process up the chain means you avoid a load of complexity later on, which is quite good.
How does that fit into the sort of themes of the conference for you?
So they've put in a huge amount of effort into it's configurable, it's quick, it's rapid, it's efficient. I think when you are configuring all that together, what Vern has done is overlay a thought process over it so you can design better architectures, basically. So he's just think about the architecture, think about the way you configure it. Cloud makes it so easy to configure something fast and get it out the door that actually you might go so fast to reach functional that you might forget the complexity will kill you later on in the process.
Wise words. Let's move on with today's show then quite quickly, because we're going to do a longer wrap-up at the end of this one where we are going to reflect on what's gone on in the last few days, and a few other bits and pieces. Like we'll get Rob's final ranking of casino bars if you're interested in that, and lots of other bits and pieces. So join us at the end, and we have got Rob Easton, who's a senior manager of the energy business unit in EMEA, who's going to join us and give his perspective on it. But before that, joining us on the last day of the conference is Max Peterson. Max is the VP of Sovereign Cloud at AWS. So we're going to talk about data sovereignty and the release of new capability. And that's a very important subject at the moment. Then we'll have Erik Farr, who is Director of Solution Architecture at AWS, as well as an author. And we take maybe a slightly broader view of what's gone on this week. But first, let's go to our conversation with Max. I am delighted to say that with us this morning and returning from last year to talk about a very important subject is Max Peterson. Max is the VP of Sovereign Cloud at AWS, and we are delighted to see you again. Max, how are you?
It is fantastic to be back here again. Thanks very much.
Our pleasure, really. It was one of our favorite conversations at last year's show.
Oh, you're setting a high bar.
Well, honestly, you got it, don't you?
Okay.
Got to start somewhere.
Yeah, you got to start somewhere.
And we're reliably informed that this year you're going to smash it.
Well, I am reliably informed that this year Capgemini smashed it.
Oh, he's like, yes.
Yeah.
Why didn't you say a word about that?
Well, there was a number of new announcements. I'm sure everybody is up on those, but a lot of them had to do with our sovereign cloud business. And one of the biggest announcements was our digital sovereignty partner competency. And the reason is simple. Customers need help working through all of the complexity around digital sovereignty. And it was great. Capgemini is one of our pilot partners. And then just last night, Ruba Borna was able to announce the full cast of digital sovereignty competency partners. And Capgemini was at the top.
I mean, we're delighted about it. It's fair to say it's a real privilege to have been involved in the pilots, and actually, we think that it is right up there with one of the important themes in cloud at the moment, right, Rob?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the conversations are rising. People want to go to cloud. Certain nation states have some reservations that need to be allayed, and the framework and the structure we approach it with sort of deals with all those risks and issues and conversations to get them to the point where they can go, which is, it's a good conversation rising fast, a lot in Europe, but other parts of the world, and I'd be interested to hear your view on Max, are starting to think about sovereignty and the move to cloud as well. So I know Europe was kind of first, but the rest appear to be picking up fast.
Well, I did do a presentation yesterday called Overcoming Complexity and Being Future Ready. And to me, I think that's really the conversation that we need to have with customers. And so again, it's great, right, to be back here with Capgemini. And you guys are good at having that conversation, but it's a complex topic. And you have to be able to sit down, and around the world, every country thinks about sovereignty just a little bit differently.
Yeah, right.
And so you have to work through that with folks. At the foundation, there's a lot of technical things, but it's also a lot about trust.
Yeah.
And so we spend a lot of time, with customers, walking them through what they view as their digital sovereignty requirements, and then explaining how AWS and our partners can help address those. You have to pick it off one by one, otherwise it's just kind of an emotional topic sometimes.
And it's a funny thing about sovereignty. You sort of think about it at a superficial level and you think it's simple. And then you start having the conversations with the nation states and the regulations and the legal positioning and the legislation they have. And it gets very complicated, very fast, multi-layered in all sorts of facets, like you say.
Yeah.
Ironically, around the world, right, you talked about compliance and regulations. Digital sovereignty is still more feeling than it is actual compliance and regulation.
Yeah.
Mostly the compliance and regulation is still centered around security.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's centered around data residency. But a lot of it is a conversation about how does a country know they can trust their mission critical systems and their data to a cloud service provider, right?
It is true that it's disarmingly complex. We did a piece of work in our day jobs trying to write down what it is and how we could simplify it and sell it as a service. And it's fair to say we've been through a few iterations on that, Robert.
Yeah. It's a weird conversation because you have to have the complexity to convince the people who are concerned about it that you've got enough in there to be able to answer all their questions. And there's this part of the system that wants the simple answer. Can you just give me the double click on yes version? You go, unfortunately, that doesn't work like that.
That was me.
That was David. Shouldn't this fit on half a slide?
I mean, literally. Can we just do one slide on
You
it?
and every other customer.
Yeah.
No, so actually it's fascinating. We've worked with regulators and cybersecurity authorities for nearly 2 decades, helping them first understand how do you build securely on the cloud, right? And security really is foundational to digital sovereignty. And so that's often a starting point with customers, because if they focus up here on this sort of dashboard of sovereign things, they miss some of the foundational things. Yeah. And security is just absolutely foundational today.
Could you maybe actually, for those listeners that haven't spent much time in this space, how would you differentiate between secure cloud and sovereign cloud?
So here's how it was a great question. We're talking about how do you break this down and make it simple? We've talked literally to hundreds of customers and they say, I need digital sovereignty. You go, absolutely. What do you mean? And they go, well, my digital things need to be sovereign.
What do you mean?
And once again, we say, right. Absolutely. What do you mean? And here's what it comes down to you if you ask the question enough, right? The first thing is it comes down to data. And it's all about data protection, data encryption, data residency, data security. And most customers, that's what they think about is it, which is almost back to security, just with a slightly different spin on it, right? How do I make sure nobody else is going to have access to my data? It might be patient data. It might be citizen data. So there's a lot of care about that, a lot of concerns about privacy. The second thing is operator access. How do I know that me and only me can get access to my applications and can control them and make sure only the proper people get access to that? And so we talk a lot about that. The third thing is resilience and survivability. Survivability in particular being really important when you're putting tax systems or you're putting patient record systems on the cloud. They want to know that even in the event of an extreme natural disaster or geopolitical disturbance, they're going to be able to keep running. And the fourth one is independence and transparency. They want to make sure, that they understand fully how their digital systems operating on the cloud and that they have visibility to it. And a lot of times this is why partners are so important, because you can provide that sort of governance, risk, and compliance piece that's not going to come from AWS. It's going to come from somebody who's local, understands the customer regulatory or compliance or just simply concerns, and is able to build the right controls around it. And so that's how we usually talk to customers about it.
How do you see, since the last time we talked about the subject, which almost exactly a year ago, actually, I think it was even on the same day of reInvent.
That would be remarkable.
Which is amazing. Can you set out how over the course of the last 12 months, the debate around sovereign cloud has evolved, and what do you think the main drivers in that are?
I think one of the things, right, is that folks have started to get clearer on what they mean when they say digital sovereignty, right? I mean, and it's helpful. We've been working with analysts, we've been working with regulators, working with our partners. And so I think we've gotten better about breaking down the elements that all up constitute the ability to deliver digital sovereignty, in a modern cloud system. That's one. I think the second one is now people are trying to figure out, right, how am I going to implement AI at scale and generative AI in particular? Right. And that's driving them back again to the cloud. So they have to understand it. There was this period of time when digital sovereignty meant, oh my gosh, I have to rebuild data centers.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely the wrong thing.
Right. And when you said, so organizations, I can see that. Gen AI has got a huge cloud pull-through for sure, for a whole host of correct reasons. One of the concerns that people have had around things like sovereign cloud is sort of just connection to a main backbone and not really having any control over that. Where are you guys in terms of thinking about how you solve for that problem for customers?
Well, the first thing that we do is we try to deliver control without compromise. And that's the thing that customers don't like. So too many answers are, well, build something small and put it on premise, or maybe deliver just a virtualized infrastructure and put it on premise.
Right.
That's the illusion of control, and it's a huge compromise. So we take the opposite approach, right, of trying to help customers understand how much they can accomplish in the cloud, the global cloud, and then which applications, which data, which workload, should remain closer to the enterprise, maybe using AWS Outposts, maybe using dedicated local zones. And the thing that was just announced at reInvent this year is how we're thinking about both disconnected operation and then full cloud capability. And so the Outpost was announced with something called static stability.
Right.
It was announced with satellite resiliency. By the way, kudos again to Capgemini. You're the underlying provider of that managed low Earth orbit satellite connectivity service.
Right.
And then the third bit was allowing customers to attach very large local data stores because they've got a lot of data on-prem. They want to get it into the cloud to be able to leverage it with things like Gen AI. But they also want to keep that thing local. So we announced partnerships to allow Pure and NetApp attachment right there to the Outpost, right on a customer premise, or perhaps in a Capgemini data center.
And I think you've raised a really interesting point, and that's, again, going back to your thing, Dave, you said about maturity in the client spaces. They used to approach this concept with one size fits all, the walled garden approach, and now they're learning they can divide up their domains, they can have different services for different requirements, it can be sort of more distributed, and I think that's freeing them a lot, and then that's allowing them to take the move, they get the confidence under it, they see the value, and then the flywheel starts. I think there has been a shift in the last 12 months around that thinking, and they're willing to approach it with a more distributed view, which is good.
That walled garden, that's on premise turns out to be really a small garden.
Yes.
Right.
And so most folks are like, wait, where's the rest of the cloud after they do this? Well, you're in the walled garden.
And it's constraining, isn't it? It's hard to move, it's expensive, it's slow, there's a lot of friction, and the people, they look with envious eyes to the people in cloud and they see the freedom that they get. So it's, how do I get there?
Sitting in their walled garden and gazing out on the meadows that surround it.
Oh, it's very poetic, Dave, I like it.
The evening sun.
Can you turn that into a haiku for us?
I could probably give you 20 slides on it like you did when you were trying.
Well, if you want a haiku, this is where you need to use Amazon Nova.
Yeah. This is a thing, I love haikus. I can't write them. AI pops along. I can write them in seconds now. Yeah, it's the killer use case for me. That's
absolutely.
it. Absolutely. And cheese jokes.
Well, so I will just share. I was stumped trying to write a Father of the Bride speech in September. My daughter was getting married.
Oh, congratulations!
Yeah, congratulations.
And so I went to Amazon Party Rock. And I'm thinking, here you go. Here's another killer application for Gen AI. And I just typed into Party Rock. I said, Father Bride speech, 5 to 7 minutes. It says, give me 5 or 10 memorable things. I'm like, daughter, camping. And and hit the button, and it pops out with a pretty darn good Father of the Bride speech. And I'm 5 minutes in, and I'm like, now I'm feeling good. I'm feeling confident again.
Confidence is rising.
Yeah. Then the model says, do you want to tweak anything? I'm like, maybe this could be a little better. Boink, hit it again. I mean, literally after 10 minutes, I was like ready to go. A little bit of fine tuning around the edges, but it was great.
Did you declare that you'd use an AI assistant when you were giving it?
This would be the first time I've actually.
Yeah, because we don't
that.
publish these to the outside world.
I doubt my daughter's listening.
Well, I'll similarly declare. I did a best man speech a couple of years ago. Actually, it wasn't a couple of years ago. It was like a decade ago or something now. And I made the terrible mistake of declaring something in the best man speech that his parents weren't aware of.
Oh, David.
Which seemed like a really funny idea at the time. Standing up there, it wasn't a funny idea.
Was it proper tumbleweed moment?
It was. Oh, it was bad. So in future, I'm with you, Max. I'll just I'll get a safety net, get somebody that knows how to write a speech to do it, whether it's artificial or not, and I'll just stick to that.
Or you just implement AI guardrails, right? you just tell it all these things, no tumbleweed moments.
No tumbleweed. Dave, is there any video evidence of you giving that speech? Because that's the sort, people used to video these things. I bet there is somewhere.
God, I hope not, Rob. And if there is, I don't want to know.
I think we need to dig that out.
I still have, every now and again, it percolates up to the top of my mind. I have a proper
I'm so sorry, Dave.
moment.
I'm so sorry.
Right, shall we get back to sovereign cloud?
Probably.
Yes. It's probably a good idea, isn't it? So let's talk about innovation. So cloud has, allowed many organizations to innovate over the course of the last, 10, 15 years now. How is sovereign cloud, helping organizations that haven't accessed that before to innovate? And just a sub-question on that is, rather than just saying, well, it's giving them access to the cloud. What specifically is it allowing them to do? And are there any kind of different challenges in an organization that's using a sovereign cloud setup in the way you described?
Well, as long, we've been on this cloud journey now for nearly 2 decades. Amazon introduced the first cloud service in 2006, right. S3. By the way, S3 got a tremendous amount of new capabilities announced here, exciting in itself at reInvent. But that was the start. Yeah. And I think the thing that we sometimes forget is that we still only have, maybe 15% of all of the workloads on the cloud now? Maybe.
Is that the number you... Yeah, I often sort of...
We're still so early.
It's still very low.
We're still so early. So honestly, the biggest thing that is happening right now is customers have kept their systems, on premise because of concerns like digital sovereignty. And as we help them unlock it, that's really the first spark of innovation. And then they start being able to take advantage of all of the things that we talked about with generative AI, with analytics. I think the coolest thing right now is that customers, once again, are looking at the potential. And so we went through a period a couple of years ago where we were kind of focused on cost savings. And cost is always important. Amazon helps customers with that. But I think customers are now taking a look again at how they can actually use some of the power of Gen AI in real world production use cases. And I emphasize real world, not that writing a Father of the Bride or best man speech or a haiku is not real world. But literally,
it's not as critical, is it? No,
not as critical.
On a personal level, it is.
Well, for you, it clearly was.
Having made a terrible mistake.
But when you match it up with enhancing the ability to save people's lives, right? The impact that it can have on healthcare. When you match it up with the ability of citizens, right, to be able to get service faster and more efficiently and less expensively. I mean, there's so much tremendous opportunity there. I think that's really a second wave of innovation. And it's important that customers don't hold themselves back with things like digital sovereignty concerns and building little walled gardens.
I think the one I like is you move the big systems and then there's loads of advantage. Performance gets better, cost goes down, and then they can attach to all the other services dead easily. And there's this light bulb thing that goes off in the head about, I never knew, I never realized. I always think seeing is believing. And when you're there and you see the advantage, it's like, oh, why did we do this before?
Yeah, well, I mean, with a lot of developers, right?
Yeah.
They're starting to get access to things like Q Developer. And suddenly all of the mundane, less interesting parts of building systems and writing codes, you can hand that off to your AI assistant and let them take care of that piece.
And I mean, developers, I used to be one, they are inherently lazy. And if they can bypass a manual task, they absolutely will. So they love it. Yeah.
I wonder then, just to maybe bring our conversation to a bit of a close, we'd like to do a bit of future gazing. So we've looked at the evolution of sovereign over the last year, both the debate and the technology. Both have come forward leaps and bounds, I think. I think the importance of it has gone up. So we were talking last year about, kind of it was a rising trend almost at that point. Now I think it's in the necessity box. What does the next year look like in terms of demand and movement on the sovereign cloud solutions, do you think? And do you see any further evolution in the argument?
Well, I know we're not supposed to shill on this show, but I would be remiss if I didn't say next year is when we launch the European sovereign cloud. So
yes.
we announced that back in October of 23. And so I'm super excited because customers are going to be able to get their hands on the European sovereign cloud at the end of 2025. So like less than a year away, fundamentally.
And what will that look like to a customer? How will it show up?
Yep. Here's the way I think it'll show up. So first, I think we're figuring out how to make it easier for customers to understand and consume, whether it's the digital competency partnership, right? The digital sovereignty partnership that we've got, or whether it's things that we're doing, which we're taking landing zone accelerators, makes it super easy for customers to get going. And we're now going down to a country level and helping them automate country-specific requirements, things like the Netherlands bio or the Spain ENS, right? So make it easy. To me, we're finally at a place where that's starting to get better. I'd say the second thing is make it more available. And so European Sovereign Cloud, Sovereign by Design, all the Outpost announcements, we're continuing to build those features in that give customers the ability to achieve both digital sovereignty, foundational security, and make it easy and simpler to access. And I would think the third thing is we're going to see, I think, better definition, better compliance schemes and regulatory schemes. We've been waiting in Europe in particular on ENISA's EU cybersecurity scheme, EUCS. And that's why, like you said before, Rob, customers wanted an answer that's not as hard and not as complicated. Yeah. And in the lack, with the lack of clarity, it makes it hard. So I'm super excited. I hope that will be ratified and in place, because I think that'll make it easier for customers.
And if organizations out there want to get going faster, particularly European ones who might be waiting for the release at the end of 25, what can they do now?
Well, I would always remind folks that the AWS cloud actually is sovereign by design. And so Peter DeSantis on Monday Night Live talked a lot about AWS Nitro.
It's embedded everywhere now, isn't it?
It's embedded everywhere. And when customers talk about data or talk about operator access, that's the sort of underlying technology that's different in AWS. Right. And it takes a bit of detail to get there.
Just say a word on Nitro for those who might not have heard of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. So about a decade ago, AWS started looking at this challenge of security and virtualization, and we said to ourselves, there has to be a better way to do this instead of software running on every box. And so foundationally, we started developing this system that took the hypervisor out of software running on your virtual instance and put it into a dedicated hardware appliance. And so Nitro takes all the physical and logical security and handles it discreetly in silicon. No operators get access to it. It's all logged. You can audit it, 24 hours a day. Right. And you can see exactly what's going on. And that's the type of foundational security and compliance that's built into AWS. It supports, by the way, right, it's the same technology that provides access to generative AI. And so customers who want to start that journey, right, they can also be confident that AWS delivers the foundational pieces to enable sovereign AI. So, I mean, Nitro is huge, but there's many, many more. And it's a conversation with customers to help them really grasp that and understand how it gives them the protection they seek, the sovereignty they seek, and all of the innovation that they want.
And it's that security everywhere all the time. It's that model. It's absolutely everywhere, embedded and baked in. I always say the biggest crime of the internet was they never put security in at the beginning, and they've been retrofitting it. What's nice with the cloud is it's baked in, and it's a much better way to do it.
I would just say the AWS cloud has it baked in.
Ah, yes, the good definition.
Maybe there's
Just for the record, I have never heard him say that thing about the internet. Have you not? No, you say like, I always say that. I've never heard you say that.
I did. I said it on another podcast about 3 weeks ago. So when I say I always
Dave
say
wasn't
it,
listening.
You clearly, no, he doesn't. He tunes out. When he hears my voice, he shuts down because his eyes
dozed off
close.
for a minute.
Took a brief nap.
Yeah.
Yeah, losing track of time, I think he calls it.
Max, thank you so much for coming to meet us again this year and sharing your insights and the changes that have gone on in your world over the last year. As we said at the beginning, it's a super important topic, and it's only growing in importance.
It's always great to get back here and talk about this, and it's great to actually do it on the final big day of reInvent, because you've got so much that's gone on in the first 3 days. There's no lack of things to talk about, and I'm just dying to hear some of your haiku.
Isn't that the truth?
We'll have to stick one in at the end, won't we now?
And before you go, we end every episode of this podcast by asking our guests what they're excited about doing next. And that can be something in your personal life, like I've got a great restaurant booked at the weekend, or it could be something in your professional life. Obviously, we're in Vegas and we're at reInvent, so we're twisting that slightly. What are you excited about doing next in Vegas, Max?
Ooh, what am I excited about doing next in
Could be
Vegas?
going home.
Yeah, well, going home will be part of the exciting journey after quite a busy week. No, I think the thing I'm most excited about in Vegas is just the ability to see so many people and connect with so many people. And just like we're doing right here, catch up on things that have happened, reflect on the year, or about at the end of the year, right? And so it's just a fantastic opportunity. You can't do that. You can't do that on a video chat.
No, we
can't do that from your office. So this is why we drag everybody out to Vegas once a year for reInvent.
And we've said this on a couple of the other shows actually we've done this week, that it actually really works in that way. Like it really works as like an industry heat check, I think.
Yeah, no, it's you can't, like you say, there's lots of advantages to virtual working these days, but humans in a room makes a big difference, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just most excited about everybody here and the ability to exchange ideas, say hi, and write a little haiku.
On that note, Max, thanks again. Have a safe trip back and enjoy the rest of reInvent.
Yeah, lovely. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank
man.
you.
End of our time at AWS reInvent 2024, and maybe to sum a few things up and take a bit of a broader view of where we're at with cloud, I am delighted to say that Erik Farr, Director of Solution Architecture at AWS, consulting partner at COE, and also cloud author, has joined us. Erik, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well, and I appreciate the time to spend here with you guys today.
Oh,
Talk
likewise.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what your day job is, and also just dig into cloud author for us.
Yeah, for sure. So first off, super excited. It's been an amazing week here in Vegas and listening to all of our new solution offerings that we've been talking about, and just really just a great vibe with everything, right? So I've just enjoyed my time. So my day job is to run the solution architecture team, which is kind of all of the technical interactions that we have between AWS and our consulting partners, right? Through our consulting COE that we have in our partnering organization. So companies like Capgemini is a super important partner for us. And my team works with your various technology leads and even sales leads around the world to make sure that you are well positioned to not only build solutions and understand our technology, but at the same time work with our customers to do, the right kind of implementation at the right kind of quality that those customers are looking for.
Cool. So you must get a pretty broad view of the state of cloud.
I do. Yeah. So I talk to customers and partners every single day, and I hear about their challenges. I hear about the things that they're going through, which, to kind of the other point that you were talking about, really kind of led to me writing a couple of books a few years back.
Right.
The primary one is cloud native architectures. And so that came about with the conversations I was having with customers that really were trying to understand more about how these architectures should be used in the cloud. Now, that was a few years ago. We've evolved and matured a lot since then. But the good news is all of the concepts and the approaches have just kind of evolved along with what I was writing in the book. And so it's kind of great to see as AWS continues to put these services out, it's just kind of keeps pushing us forward with not just those concepts, but with what our customers are demanding from us.
Right. I'm interested in your definition of cloud native and whether in that book you looked at other aspects of cloud native beyond, say, technical architectures. So I'm quite interested in ideas like cloud native organizations or sort of cloud native operating models, for example, or ways of working. What are your thoughts on that? And have they evolved much since you wrote your book?
Yeah, so they definitely have evolved. I think back then, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, we were really thinking a lot about cloud centers of excellences to make sure that you are kind of bringing these the best of your a company, whether it's a partner or a customer, together to drive that kind of knowledge into their wider business. What we're seeing today is that adoption is really kind of matured, right? So it's happened. We're kind of seeing a really interesting kind of evolution of all of this, which is moving into really line of business, right? Not to say that IT and the kind of CIO side of the house is not important, but when we think about long-term scale and growth of AWS and our partners' businesses, we see that leaning more and more into how do we transform a company's actual operations and outcomes versus just the technology.
Right. And I think that's an excellent bridge into one of the conversations we wanted to have with you today.
Yeah.
Which is around driving differentiation through like cloud transformation and I guess cloud innovation in there too. And I think our perspective on it would be that when you do a cloud transformation, a cloud migration, some people think of that as purely moving the pots and pans around.
Yeah.
And some people might, kind of bang on about modernization a little bit and, they might refactor some of their stack. They might even rewrite an application. But when I think about it, when I think of true cloud-driven transformation, to me, it's about how do you take what you can now do and move that up the stack into the businesses. And then once you've done that, how can businesses do different things?
And I think the angle is the education cycle with people in that, which is how do I think differently about the problem and solve it with novel ideas. So cloud gives you a lot of flexibility, I think, in there where you can test and learn a lot. And it is that, how do I break the cultural linear thinking and go to more dynamic as well? So it's a big shift, I think, for many organizations with the potential. Yeah.
Huge. So Erik, when you think about cloud transformation, what's the scope and scale of that for you these days?
Yeah, it's a really hot topic and one that I definitely talk about all week this week for sure, and even in before and after this event as well. So when I think about this, it's really as simple as I look at transformations as really a fully business-led approach, right? You don't transform an architecture, right? You don't transform even a customer's estate, in my opinion. What we're doing and what partners like Capgemini are doing with your customers are talking about how do you transform their business to achieve something that they're not getting today from a business perspective. Not about technology, not about anything else, but getting them better and faster at designing or developing or producing whatever it is that they do for their customers at the end. Now that to me is transformation. Now where the interesting part lies is we talk a lot about migration and modernization. Well, how does that fit into it? For me, modernization is the process of taking that journey to of transformation and modernizing the IT landscape along the way. So it's many different modernization and potentially migration activities that take place to achieve the long-term transformational outcome that customer is demanding from us and from you.
Right.
And I think there's a part there. For a long time, the IT industry lost credibility because it did IT for IT. And the business just sat there staring at the IT division going, why do we have you? What are you doing? Nothing ever changes. And I think now
Printers aren't even working.
Yeah. The printers. But the way you describe it there is very good, because it's that you're going to do something different with the business,
Yes.
and then it can get them excited and they understand the power of technology and business together. So I think it's allowing the IT organization to drag themselves out of the reputation turmoil that we're in for a long time.
Yeah.
I wonder what you think then so let's say this can either be hypothetical or a case study. If you've got one, feel free. An organization that has gone through like a legit cloud transformation. To me, I'll put my cards on the table. I think cloud transformation and say digital transformation I use them relatively, kind of synonymously. AI transformation coming along might be slightly different, but cloud and digital, I think, for me, broadly the same definition. What does good look like? And as a result of doing that, what good examples of differentiation have you seen that the business now can do differently, and therefore it is?
Yeah. So listen, I think that when you look at that transformation, the kind of daunting part about this is that when you look at the end of that, it's hard to even visualize what that actually is, and because it could be a mini year, potentially even like up to a decade process of changing your internal processes, which ultimately leads to newer and fresher technology to allow you to get to the point that you want to be. So what I see and what I'm kind of noticing, around my conversations are, let's think about a transformation, but in bite-sized chunks. We need to have that long-term vision, but we need to understand: are we trying to double the amount of our output, or do we just want to go up by a few percent a year? That allows us to streamline either our supply chains or our ability to get something to our manufacturing capabilities, et cetera. And eventually that builds on itself and you get to the double over time.
Right.
You can't start with that, right? It just is too complicated.
Yeah, exactly. And the way that I sort of think about it is when you transition to cloud, you're removing a lot of the sort of traditional procurement lead times. You're removing stand-up times. You're introducing a new technology stack. Hopefully as well, you're introducing new ways of working around that weren't possible on the old stack. One of the models I like to talk about in this, I don't know whether you've seen it, is a great model called the Cynefin framework by a guy called Dave Snowden. And he, without going into it in too much detail, he talks about like 4 states of the world: world of order, world of complicated, world of complexity, and world of chaos. And the 2 key ones are complicated and complexity. And you can read them almost, I'm radically oversimplifying this for speed, but complicated is almost like waterfall in the sense of like quite predictable. You can predict well ahead. You're doing things that have got a reduced number of unknowns. And as a result of that, you can work in a certain way, like waterfall or 3-year planning or whatever it might be. Yeah. And in the world of complexity, it's much more iterative. It's market test, see what happens, pivot to results like in real time almost, or at least quarter by quarter, let's say. And it's always struck me when reading that model that when people are describing what they want digital to be like and what they want digital culture to be like, or even examples like Amazon.com's testing regime where they're putting out, hundreds of things on a daily basis and just to see whether they work or not and get the feedback. How does that land on you? Like, because I really like that model. And in my mind, when you talk about digital transformation, is it as simple as I want to move my organization from working in a complicated way to working in a complex way?
Yeah, it's a great analogy or a way to think about it for sure. I like that. And at Amazon, we have a concept called kind of like failing fast, but with one-way tour and two-way door decisions, right?
Doors,
so that's the kind of our way of saying this. And the idea is that we're constantly trying to push the decision making down, so you're going faster down the chain of command, and eventually. The reality is that most decisions can be reversed, meaning there are two-way doors, you back out of it. And that's the same concept. You want your organization to be out there thinking about what you can do, pushing forward, pushing the boundaries, doing things with new technology, doing things with new approaches, and being able to quickly pivot and then going into the right direction if that doesn't work. That will get you to the innovation that you need, because innovation doesn't happen overnight. It's a winding curve that takes place with all of this failure and successes, and then the technology that comes along with it.
I think there's, like the two-way door analogy, a lot of companies, when they're decisioning, consider everything to be a one-way door. Mm-hmm. They don't think about how they can make it a two-way door, and then it's safe to proceed because you can always come back. I think they're stuck in a cycle many of the times where they just think it's a place in their return because they're used to the traditional approach to everything where it is you have to put so much energy and effort into it. The rollback is extremely complicated. So it's a great way to try and get organizations to think differently.
Yeah, and I'd almost argue that almost all the decisions are two-way doors.
Yeah.
I would argue, try to show me one that's a one-way door, and I'll pretty much tell you how we can get it to a two-way door.
Yeah,
it's because you break it up, right? You make the people more accountable, lower down, so they can make the decisions and not have to like make the huge one-way door.
Yeah, I actually like that. The discipline of it. Well, we think that's a one-way door. It's like, no, let's try and investigate how to make it a two-way door. I like that very much.
Yeah.
Are you going to use that, Dave? Is that a thing for you? Have you banked that for
I
cats later?
I think that may well resurface.
Brilliant.
I love it.
I wanted to also briefly chat to you about cloud maturity and where, like, as a world, we are at the moment. And I think what we've talked about a lot on the show is that cloud is more than a platform. It is an era of compute. So, like mainframe, first era of compute, client server, maybe with a bit of early internet in there, second era of compute, and then cloud as being the sort of third major era of compute is how we're sort of framing it a little bit.
Sure.
And our kind of rationale on that is that, within those eras, there are lots of iterations of different things, but actually it clicks over into a new era at a point that you can do things differently, like we've just been talking about. You can actually restructure your organization around the fact that your tech enablement is now no longer getting in your way of pace, for example.
Sure.
So therefore, it's a new era. And then within that era is a stack, and within that stack is AI.
Yeah.
So in your head, is AI part of the cloud era? Or is AI the next era?
Yeah, as you were talking about that, I was trying to, really thinking through that exact question, and that was popping into my brain. And, the way I'm kind of thinking about this is, first off, I don't know, okay, is the easy answer, because I think we're in that transition.
Right.
Maybe in the future, we'll look back and say, oh yeah, it was a clear delineation point, and now right now, it is definitely together, right? When you listen to all of the various keynotes this week and the activities or the services that we're pushing to market, what you're seeing is kind of that convergence, right? So for example, we just really exciting new announcement on Q Developer, which is something I'm really interested in because all of my partners use this, right? So when you look at Q Developer, we've already had the ability to do, not just code generation, but, some kind of basic agentic activities. Well, this week, we've also announced the ability to, with new agents inside Q Developer to use, generate documentation, do code reviews, and unit tests, which then allows those developers to not only develop the code or infrastructure as code, doesn't have to just be application code, to do what they need to do. And now they're getting that productivity so they can just run it, move forward, right? And now the real question is, if they do gain, say, 20 hours a week of more time, is that 20 hours used for more productivity? Are they doing more research? Are they going more quality? I think the jury's out on that. We're still trying to figure out what that looks like.
And there's a really interesting point about the calculation for productivity. Sometimes people say, I took a task away, therefore that human will actually do something else. And sometimes the human doesn't.
Exactly.
Because they are humans.
Yeah.
And sometimes their behavior isn't as
logically
quite
predictable.
Yeah, you can't logically predict how productivity and when you give somebody time, what they're going to use with
Right.
it. And I think there's always that P times Q argument, which is going to be ace. But actually, I think there's a lot of learning that has to go into that about what does a developer do with that spare time.
Yeah, right.
Hugely important.
Well, let's build on some of these change ideas, and maybe to bring our conversation for today to a little bit of a conclusion, let's return to the main theme of the conference, which has been turning ideas into reality.
Yeah.
I'm going to append on the end of that at scale, and there's a few things going on in us putting that appendix on it. The first is, turning ideas into proof of concepts is, it's interesting and sometimes is required. But actually, it's much better if you're actually implementing it. And of course, that's almost the point. I'm sure that this is what the theme of the conference is getting at. Sort of where we are with AI, right? We're at a point where we're pushing to get past the proof of concept phase. There's some examples of it now where people are using it at scale, but we're not seeing massive enterprise transformations yet on the back of it. It's almost inevitably coming. In your mind, when you're just approaching scaling something, like scaling an idea, whether it's AI or whether it's a cloud transformation, whatever it might be. What are your steps to successful scaling?
Yeah, we've got a really interesting example I'll use. So, internally, we at AWS, are constantly trying to think through how to solve that and get our people, whether our solution architects or whatever, to kind of be thinking about these ideas and how we can do things and scale things and, just kind of get it out there, but make it useful, right? And so we had kind of like a Shark Tank activity that we do internally where we take some really cool ideas, maybe 5 or 6 of them, all the senior leadership and the partner work kind of sits down and listens to these folks. And we had a really interesting one. So when our partners are kind of working on solutions, there's a task that we need them to do called a foundational technical review. And we found that's taking a lot of hours, multiple hours for a few teams. Now we've learned how to basically take a technology using generative AI, automate that, right? That was then, kind of taken and championed by our leadership. And actually just 2 weeks ago, we've now published that to our AWS Partner Central, which allows our partners to literally just use it without humans on the AWS side in the beginning. Cool. So it's kind of a neat way that we're trying to figure out ourselves how to do it and then publish it and scale it out. So yeah.
It's the eat your own dog food part, which isn't it? Which is you've used it, it works, you can stick it out there and it's applicable.
Yeah.
I think that's a very important point. And the ability, sometimes those processes can be quite laborious and slow. And I think you take that out, it makes people more willing to do the right thing as well, isn't it? I always say make the right thing easy to do and the wrong thing hard to do.
And that's you always said that what was it? The crime of
the greatest crime of the internet was that security was never baked in.
That's what you always say.
Love it.
I don't wait. See it? Look, see it? Yeah, it's a good point. See, it resonates. That architectures unite against you, Dave. But so maybe anyway, going back to reality. The right thing is to do, the wrong thing hard to do, and you can distill a lot of experience into those types of processes and make it easy because it's the when you take the heavy lifting away, like you've always said, the undifferentiated heavy lifting, you're now applying that to the human tasks at scale as well, which is quite cool.
Yeah, and let me just say this too, and this is applicable for all of these kind of POCs, if you will, right? And as we scale them out and push them into production, the reason why there's so many POCs that maybe fail or aren't going to production as much as we want, as much as our customers would want, is because they're kind of science experiments, right? And the key is, what is the productivity metric that we're measuring for that one? What does it do? Why are you doing it? And in this particular case, we could easily say this many hours, this many people, this many things. That's the thinking that we should all be having when we're creating these POCs. The more we can measure it and show the value, the quicker they'll make it to the end state.
And there's this, we're starting to talk about the system prompting you. So at the moment, we come in as humans and we interact with the system and we ask it to do things. There's the sort of theory rise and say the system will now prompt you to do things and remind you of certain things. And if you go back to Werner's keynote and he talked about complexity, what you now could have is systems prompting you to say, when you scale this may not be the best way to do it. You may want to consider a different approach with the direction that you're taking. That's quite nice. So you can take the mistake out or the architectural regret out of the early life cycle a lot faster. So I really like that concept of spot the errors via the system so that you take the pain away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think the other thing I would say about scaling, and maybe this is a little bit of a cliche, but I think it bears repeating, is just start.
Yeah.
There's nothing like the learning process in doing something rather than imagining what it would be like to do something.
Right.
Just getting on with it for me is a critical part of it.
And that's obviously the beauty of a lot of our services. They could just be used. They're not very there's a lot of very little friction. And exactly, just let's get out there and think and build and grow for ourselves and for our customers. We're going to do the right things in the end.
Well, look, I think on that note, let's draw ourselves to a bit of a conclusion. Erik, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it.
Oh, I could have kept going for ages on this subject. This is the stuff that I really enjoy. You know what I always say, Rob?
What are you excited about doing next, Dave? Yeah.
Exactly. It's literally what I was going to do. So we end the show by asking our guest what they're excited about doing next. And that could be you've got a good restaurant booked at the weekend. It could be you're just dying to go home and see the faces of your family again. Erik, what are you excited about doing next?
Well, my 16-year anniversary is tomorrow. So
wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. I do get to go home and see my family,
Wonderful.
my wife. So I'm excited about that. But when I think about it from a work perspective, I've had amazing conversations this week. The key is, and this is for everybody listening, you should be thinking about what are you going to do to drive off the momentum of this week, right? You've talked to people, you've seen things. I'm going to go out, I'm going to meet, I'm going to go and set up the meetings that I've said I was going to set up. We're going to drive those next steps because that's how we make these partnerships and the work with our customers better. That's my next couple of months. I'm looking forward to that.
All right, so that's it. We are now at the end of day 3 of Amazon reInvent 2024. And we are just going to have a bit of a wrap-up chat. And I'm delighted to say that joining us is Rob Easton. Rob is the Senior Manager of the Energy Business Unit in EMEA for AWS and an old mate of mine. Rob, good to see you, man.
Thank you very much, Dave. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you for dropping in to help us wrap up.
No problem.
How has your conference been so far?
Oh, I mean, you come in a little bit nervous, a little bit sort of expectations of what the week's going to be like. 'Cause there's so much planning that goes into it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I just think a real buzz around the whole place. It's turned into a conference that's much more of, I think, an industry conference, not just AWS, and so many partners. And so a lot of planning that goes into it. And I think it's been really worth it. You know, customers have really enjoyed it.
It's been a good buzzy one, I think, generally.
Yeah. There's always a lot of energy at this one, but it feels like this one's gone up to 11.
Now, talking about ranking things, we've been doing an empirical study this week.
It's science everywhere. This podcast.
This is properly baselined with solid definitions. Where do you stand on casino bars?
Too noisy.
Oof.
Is that old?
Yeah, no,
This is
me.
Robert's definition of me.
Well,
It's too noisy, too expensive, and people smoke at them.
Yeah. And also, you know, it just feels like an extension of the conference that you've been in for the 24 hours before, and you just sort of roll straight into the next thing. So, we actually hire, our services organization hired Mott 32, one of the restaurants down there, but they deliberately put in a lot of sound, sort of like noise cancelling curtains, and there was a little bit more to that. But try and stay away from those casino bars.
See, Dave, that's 2 of us.
Well, let's get onto the ranking, shall we?
Okay,
and let's just see how science is coming. Let's let science be the judge.
And remember, on the ranking, it's 1 to 5. However, I do need to remind the listeners that if we put a normal bar into this list, all casino bars go to 0. It's the way it works.
I refuse.
It's all relative. It's relative.
When we were setting up this experiment, you did not have that rule in. You can't just add it now because you feel like it.
I can, because I'm the one doing the scoring system.
Right. So remind us of the bars you've done and the scores so far.
So there was the one at the El Cortez. That got a 4.
I think that's current lead, isn't it?
Yeah, that is the lead. We got the Bar Luca, which was a 3 downgraded to a 2. I
think you've been a little harsh on Bar Luca, but go on.
And then we did the bar at the D, not the long bar, but the other one round the corner with the patio furniture. And that got a 2. That was a 2.
And I think the only reason you've given that such a high score is because it was your idea to go with the D.
But it's the Adiamo Steak Restaurant there, which is very, very good.
Yes, that was good.
I would highly recommend.
We're not ranking steak restaurants right now.
Well, we should do. But
I mean, that's maybe one for future. So
that's next year.
We have got a couple more thrown into the mix that we have been, diligently checking out. So the first one I'm going to throw at you, Robert, is the Bellini in the Venetian.
It's 2. That might actually be a 1. I'll tell you why.
Go on.
1. It just looks like it's part of the casino. There's no differentiation.
It's very much of a part of it. Yeah.
You can't get served. It's packed. It's a nightmare, that bar.
I also thought yesterday what was particularly annoying about it. So I've had a little bit of a soft spot for it because I've had a couple of good times there over the years. But yesterday, what was particularly irritating is like the little hatch that they move up to go through the bar.
Angry barman.
I mean, there must have been somebody coming in out of that hatch literally once every 30 seconds.
We happened to be stood there. And we think that they're all angry.
You didn't do the Only Fools and Horses when he just... I mean,
that would have been comedy gold.
That is comedy gold.
It was a perfect scenario for that. A perfect scenario. But
I see you there, Dave, just being quite swish and...
He is quite suave, and then it all falls away as he falls away.
Beasley Ham. So the final casino bar in our scientific study is the legendary Bugsy's in the Flamingo.
Oh, this is
been open since 1946
and hasn't closed.
Yeah, probably.
Probably has a few times, if I'm brutally honest. So the Flamingo casino floor's all right. It's pretty good.
Good fun.
You've got easier to get served. Yep. The barman has been the same for the last how many years
Very
we've been going.
recognisable barman.
Incredibly recognisable.
Whose name on his name tag is Wizard.
Oh.
So if we have to... see, the problem is it's like a bit of a mecca.
Yeah.
But it's still a bit crap.
It's a bit grungy.
Yeah, grungy. That's a good word. So it's like a 3.5.
3 point.
It's not the same as El Cortez. That was really good, that one, in comparison. I'm still hunting the 5. I'm not giving anything a 5.
Okay, so Rob's scientific study. I think we've been diligent with that, other than you trying to throw new rules in every night. Like, honestly, no rigor.
I think I've got, a very popular one amongst AWS people and customers is Chandelier Bar.
No, you haven't done that one.
We cannot go past that one.
At the Cosmo.
I am glad you brought that into the mix, Rob. You've earned your place on the show already. Tell us about the Chandelier Bar.
Chandelier Bar, 3 floors. It's sort of like the casino area at the bottom. And
it's at the Cosmo, isn't it?
It's at the Cosmo. Reassuringly expensive, but you do get a decent service. I think that's actually quite a good one. But
so, what would you give that one out of 5 if you compare it to the others?
Yes, having done 7 reinvents, I feel I'm equally qualified to look at bars. I've got that as a good 4. Very good 4.
Nailed on 4.
If you want a 5, Cosmo Barbershop.
That's
not
good.
Strictly a casino bar, though, is it?
Yeah, that is true.
Like, what is going? No rigor in this system.
Sorry, has it all fallen apart at the end again?
Yeah, we spent ages setting this experiment, though.
Did we?
And then there's Julie's in Juliet's in Palazzo is just off that, and I think they call it Birdcage Bar as well, but that's again very popular one, and it looks like your living room when you go in. So I think that's good. I think also a lot of these bars have actually been reserved by vendors this year. I think that's quite a big change.
That's true.
You used to be able to say, meet you at the Grand Lux and we could have a lunch there or a breakfast there. That's been totally taken out by a vendor. Same with Yardbird, same with all those other ones. So, I do feel like that was always difficult. Was a place to meet up where you can hear people and have a little bit of a stand-up meeting or whatever.
Right.
Whereas all of those around Venetian Palazzo, someone is making, the money that's involved in renting these places. The other one that's interesting, Smith and Wollensky's.
I went there.
We're well off the track from the definition of casino bar at this point. I'm going to put that into the...
That is true. We're now in restaurant territory, but it's quite a nice atmosphere there, actually.
If you haven't done Juliet's, take a look at that one.
Well, that is the one we need to...
we do next time around. We're going to check that one out.
Yeah.
So, Marcel, before we move on, you've heard the rigor. You're the producer. I mean, obviously, we'll have a talk later about Rob's execution of the experiment. But beyond that, what was your favourite?
Cortez.
The Cortez.
That's for me.
The old-fashioned.
I'll upgrade the Cortez to 4.5.
Big leather shares.
What's going on with this experiment, Rob? You're fast and loose. And loose.
What criteria have you put to this?
You'd wonder, wouldn't you, Rob?
Yeah.
So, price.
Yeah.
Atmosphere, not soulless, basically. Smokiness, and then the ability to actually hear a human speak to you.
Drink quality.
Maybe I should throw that in. See, now you're playing fast and loose. Look at this.
It's interesting, Rob. You don't mention sort of the people you go with. Or are you just sampling this on your own?
No, I don't get
because
a choice.
normally you say a bar is awesome time is generally
the people that you're with.
I only really.
I just imagine you going around with a clipboard at this point.
You've probably.
Marcel and I never
personality.
frequent them, just for the record. It's like Rob
me
goes
with a
to do it by
clipboard.
himself.
Me with a clipboard on my own in a casino bar. There's an image that will be memorable.
Well, I think we've done that justice. I think other than the somewhat less than rigorous experiment, which is a little bit disappointing. Other than that, I think we've got to a good place. And for the record, mine is probably the El Cortez as well.
There you go, the winner.
I have to check it out.
One thing I really like about the El Cortez generally, and for those who haven't been, it's on Fremont Street, and it's one of the original casinos, like from right back in the day, and it's built to like a normal human scale. So if you go in any of the ones on the Strip, they're not built to human scale, are they? They're like, I don't know what they are, like 50-foot ceilings, and like everywhere's like a 35-minute walk. And
to the bar.
Yeah, the El Cortez just feels like you're in like a normal scale building. And they've got this like really nice bar just off their floor, gaming floor. Big leather seats, and it's nice.
It doesn't actually feel like a casino bar.
No, it doesn't.
It feels like a normal bar.
Good. But I'll let you have it. Because it is an excellent one. Right. So that important work has been done for the week. Well done, Robert.
Do I get a prize?
No.
Star?
We were lining up a prize until it just went completely haphazard towards the end.
You just said well done.
Yeah. Well, I was trying to be nice. Right. Big themes of the week. Let's talk about the actual reason we were here. So the big theme of the conference has been turn your ideas into reality.
Yeah.
I think AWS coming in, the big expectation was what were the big announcements on AI going to be, and how is that going to be positioned, and what's going to happen. I thought the week started really well, like hot out of the traps, with Jassy on stage talking about Amazon.com's use of AI over a number of years, sort of cementing the expertise. There was announcements like Nova, which was a new part of Bedrock, which we'll come to in a second. We also had Apple on stage.
Yeah.
Kind of with an incredibly strong recommendation about the platform. So, Rob, let's come to you first of all. What were your expectations coming in? How did you find those initial keynote messages?
Yeah. I think, also to add JP Morgan on stage as well.
Yep.
5, 6, 7 years ago, financial services just sort of getting going with it. But they talked about they've migrated over 1,000 applications to the cloud. The rules and regulations around that might have prevented them in the past, but that sort of changed as well. I think if you think back to last year, Werner Vogels did talk about the frugal architect.
Yeah.
That's right.
And speaking to people this year, people actually have built that into their operations. And so you then think, right, what are customers going to take from this conference and then build into their operations or change?
Do you think they'll take Simplexity?
I think they'll take elements of it, Dave. Sort of building security from minute one. I think he talked about that. He also talked about automation, not what to automate, but what you don't automate. And if you can change your paradigm like that, and build in those processes from minute one. The other thing that's interesting, I think, cost optimization It's not just about getting a reserved instance or a savings plan. It's about looking at your end-to-end development of a system for an outcome. And Werner talked about there, if you look at teams, give them an outcome and then give them the tools to do that and build in speed. Yeah. And if you give the ownership to those people, then they will execute against the tools that they have.
Which actually, not only is that important from a point of view of the point he was making about, financial responsibility and frugality, but actually it's a key tenet of a good operating model or a good modern operating model, isn't it?
Oh, well, the way he talked about keeping some complexity under control and cell-based approaches to how you build, and, that's technology and the operating model coming together to create efficiency. And that was like the underpinning concept of Nova, a lot of flexibility and efficiency in that structure to allow you to do your models more effectively. So you can see that theme going straight through everything.
Let's dip into Nova a little bit and just position that for us, Rob, and how it sits against Bedrock. What does it do?
So it is basically foundational models, so what they call frontier intelligence. So it's multimodal in its concept. You can tier it, so you can select what you want at the right time. So there's 4 levels. There's micro, it's text only. So that's the very simple, cheap, effective one. Then you've got light, which is where you can be multimodal, so image, video, and text. You've got pro, which is very capable, probably a cost power balance being struck there. That's what they see pro as, the one that sort of, has all that balance. And then Premiere, which has got everything, all the lights and the flashing sounds and everything else that allows you to build very, very complex models, available early 2025. So then you've got this approach, and they talked a lot about improvements in around how you can chain things together. You can do the sort of agentic future with that, going back to the builders concept. So huge flexibility, focusing on efficiency, focusing on reducing complexity, and giving you all the options you would need to go and do something fast, as Rob says, to create a decent outcome.
And what was your view, Rob, on the AI positioning this year? Did you feel that were you happy with it?
I mean, it's a buzzword of everywhere, and you go to all the big conference and everyone wants to latch on. I think a lot of customers are thinking about the true business value and the business case to some of these challenges.
Yeah.
I don't think that was quite talked about as much, which is the dollars that you have to put in to a Gen AI project and what dollars are you going to get out.
Right.
And so that's
still a lot of ambiguity, isn't it? For like how you actually use these things. It's like everyone's looking at them going, God, that looks incredibly useful, but what do I actually use it for?
Yeah. And what is the business outcome?
Yeah.
So business leaders are looking at, some of the energy customers have got over 150, 200 different ideas, and they've got to understand, find out what is the actual business value of that project. We've seen some great things. Cepsa, Spanish energy companies, just changed their name to Moeve.
Right.
And David, the CDO, was talking in the executive summit this week. And they've done a lot of Gen AI projects around looking at legal documentation, putting that into Bedrock and understanding, getting, an understanding of all the different terms and conditions they have, risk profiles, and of all their legal documentation, also all their contracts with suppliers, and then putting that into one particular system to then understand what are the outcomes they can get.
Right.
But it's difficult to know what the business value of that is and how many people that might, improve, and what's the speed of that. But it's obviously a truly valuable project.
Right.
And other ones, interesting seeing like ServiceNow on the floor here as well. A lot of Gen AI capabilities with AWS, looking at ticketing systems that come through, how you then understand and get correlation from those on a much, much larger scale. And we've seen that with many other customers doing that type of project.
There was a lot that went into Amazon Connect as well, or AWS Connect, I should say, which is around better efficiency around contact centers and interaction models. There was an awful lot of focus stuck on that as well, which is again is a solution that is basically an industry one for contact center capability.
Yeah, and that comes out of sort of developments that Amazon.com do. Yeah. So a lot of Andy Jassy talked about that today. Also, some of the different things in the keynote with Swami and also Werner Vogel's here, just about what Amazon.com do. Yeah. And obviously on service, looking at when you want to return a product to Amazon, I'm gobsmacked by how those people turn. Well, it's not people, it's
robots and that.
Robots, and you put in the request. I had an item the other day, and they said, "Look, don't bother returning it for the postage. You can still keep it, but I'll give you the refund." Right. And you're like,
right.
right.
Yeah,
how does
cool.
that work? Yeah. But ultimately, all of those services and contact centers that are in Amazon.com, we have over 100,000 people in our service center for our retail business that use a technology like AWS Connect. And then that gets optimized and looking at all the different permutations and obviously anticipating what people are doing and then building Gen AI on top of that.
Talking about the sort of vertical exploit of the toolbox. So Rob has talked all week about it's the developers conference and it's a toolbox and things like that.
Builders, Dave. Builders.
That's what I meant.
Builders.
That's the word I'm looking for. You know what you always say, Rob? This is a builders conference.
So much so you can get a tattoo with the Builders Conference and AWS. You can get the leadership principles tattooed on your arm. Just downstairs, actually. There's a big
do you know
tattoo.
any Amazonians who've had that done?
I don't, but there was a very big queue and it is absolutely
That is
jammed.
the bit that surprises me.
Unbelievable.
You get a tattoo. You must be quite invested to do that.
Yeah.
Well, I was surprised when I saw that big one you've got on your back. You just got the logo on the tick thing, haven't you? The
Customer
arrow.
obsession,
Yeah.
Dave.
Right, where I was going to go with that is we've been examining the notion of the builder's toolbox, but actually we've also been looking at vertical application. And I think a lot of the Amazon.com examples were very good expressions of the vertical application of the technology to achieve kind of very modern business goals. We've also talked and spent some time in the world of automotive, the world of manufacturing, and then we've also looked sort of more generally across things like financial services and other sectors. But Rob, your day job is in energy. Give us your perspective on verticalization, where AWS is up to in that world and a little bit of a glimpse into the world of energy.
Yeah, customers are looking at putting in core building blocks to IT and building the landing zone, creating amazing applications that then sit on the cloud. But a lot of it can be lift and shift and the business doesn't actually see any difference. And then over the last 5-6 years, we've seen more and more industry verticalization of our solutions as well. You look at the floor here, we've got healthcare and life science, we've got all of the financial services, and then also energy. And this year, I think we've had a record number of customers that are presenting on our behalf and with us. So ExxonMobil this year, we're delighted to have them on stage with us. As I said, Moeve had done an awesome job in looking at generative AI and building a whole factory around that. Also Nextera and also BP Energy Trading. I think that's what's great about the energy industry for certainly the majors. They've got everything from selling a Mars bar through to obviously trading on enormous systems. So as you then look at that line of business, what does it need to do its business better and make better decisions? And therefore, how does technology make a difference to that? And what we're seeing is that line of business setting up digital native companies maybe on the side, or taking those individuals that were in core IT, putting them into the line of business. I think getting your organizational structure, so that little core team has got to have someone from security, someone from technology with the line of business and deciding how they can be doing their business better. And so we've seen lots of different companies coming forward with solutions that have benefited from technology on a massive, massive scale.
Very good. Thank you for that insight. I think we've actually ended up covering quite a lot of the verticals. I'm quite pleased with that.
We have. I mean, it's the concept of the power of three, isn't it? Yeah. It's the capability. It's the expertise from ISVs, vendors, etc., partners, and then it's the business knowledge that comes from the client or the customer, and they all come together and build something, and it's focused on differentiation and being able to pivot and change and do it at pace and speed.
Yeah, another customer example, Duke Energy. What they look at is the distributed grid and how to improve the performance of that grid. And we've got projects. I mean, Brazil is an enormous area, millions and millions of customers, all connected to the grid for energy, and they have over 10 hours of downtime in a year of energy not coming to your household or not coming to your business? How do you then deal with that? So the grid itself, from an energy perspective, needs to be managed and accurately monitored and forecasted for.
Right.
Also, distributed solar is huge in the world of your connected home. How does that then affect the grid? Grid monitoring, that's the needs so much automation into those things. And you look at sort of IoT devices out to the edge,
right? And
we've seen sort of micro LLMs, so that you can actually start to think about, can you build LLMs on a Raspberry Pi device, or could you start to get into distributed computing starting to become more and more intelligent? And then how does that affect your business? And where that's really interesting, I don't know, the developments around Kuiper. I don't know if you've seen some of those. That is, again, game changing. It's not just about bringing broadband to multiple areas, but right now we're seeing huge level of interest there from enterprises, because it's secure. It's going to be incredibly fast. And customers are really interested. We're starting to see reservations in different parts of the world that you can get with Kuiper. It's mainly the Northern Hemisphere that's coming through. But you're going to see those satellites going up. We're going to have more than 3,000 satellites across the world building these things. And
very cool.
Yeah, incredible. But I think for energy customers that have got assets in different parts of the world, in very remote parts of the world, how does that then change your business? And someone like Duke Energy is doing a great job of monitoring the grid that then provides those energy to those remote parts.
Brilliant. Thank you for that insight, Rob. Just before we wrap up and give our final thoughts, anything else that we've missed? Any other announcements you wanted to call out that resonated?
I don't know. I think there was an awful lot, very technical, I think, at times. But the big one for me was the endorsements around the best technology for AI. I think that's the one that the Apple one, which I think was a bit of a surprise, but like an incredible endorsement.
I mean, highly unusual for Apple to do something like that, I think.
Yeah, they don't talk about their internals at all. Yeah. And suddenly they've gone, ooh, we do this.
We didn't. You don't know who's on the stage, and it wasn't shared widely for us, and so I think those little surprise moments are
cool.
And they talk about those point in time reflections on one's career and how you then create something new for the business. But that was a big moment, I think.
And I'm just looking at our marketing producer here, Marcel, and I'm going to use the word. It was a moment that mattered.
Wow.
You see, I do pay attention, unlike Dave, who clearly doesn't listen to anything I say.
What do you say?
Good.
All right, then. So I think it sounds like pretty good conference, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, and not to forget the Executive Summit, over 2,000 sort of CIOs that join this conference as well. I think you've got to try and get a balance. The Andy Jassy fireside chat that was there, that's quite an endorsement to have the CEO of Amazon.com come to such a conference. Obviously, he was a little bit born from the world of technology, but to have such a company with a CEO that is so then linked to IT and technology, I think is good for all the technologists. And also you look at the floor here and how many people are employed by this industry that we have. And certainly looking at people coming through education right now and coming through schools and universities and turning to technology as a job. And we heard stats about Amazon.com and AWS investing in the communities. Technology is such a great career for so many people coming into it. And I think, you've got to be really proud of the work that everyone is doing around it. And you guys tell the story in a very natural way. And I know that I sit on aeroplanes and listen to your podcast and I really enjoy it. So well done. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, you very much.
Thank you very much. So, replay tonight?
No, it's time to go home, David.
Well, are you going to go to replay, Rob? What's your moves?
I'm actually going home tonight as well, but I thought the party last year was brilliant, and they actually have a little VIP area, but then they have Major Lazer were brilliant last year, and I'm sure that they build in the ping pong tournament, and then they have food.
It looks a lot of fun, doesn't it?
Weezer tonight.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Weezer as well.
Weezer
Good 90s band.
Yeah, I'm slightly disappointed that it's actually hard to get a Thursday night flight out. So we booked our flights like literally 3/4 of a year ago.
Yeah.
Got a Thursday night flight now. I'm like, oh, damn.
Should have stayed for Weezer.
Yeah,
it really is. I think also, you talk about the food here, I think has been a little bit of a step up. I think generally, again, because maybe those companies are taking out those bars, and when you go to there, you end up nibbling the whole time.
Yeah.
But you always feel like you come to the concert, there's thousands and thousands of people. It is really, it's well organized. They've thought long and hard about it. I think in the past, a lot of the breakout sessions, so jammed you can't get in, but I haven't heard or seen on X or on any of the platforms any major complaints.
No, it's been a good one this year. It's been very well run.
What I mean?
It's very
that
well
was
run,
always a thing in the past.
True, I haven't seen it.
And generally the flow of people is pretty good, but I haven't been to some of the other. Mandalay Bay isn't. They have a load of sessions there. They have a load of sessions in the Wynn.
No, I didn't go to any of the outlying ones this time. I was in the Venetian the whole time. Yeah. Marcel, what do you reckon? Any good?
Yeah, it was amazing seeing again 70,000 people in one place. Everybody energized.
All right.
Looking at new technology. It's always amazing what's happened in the coming years.
And with that, are you hoping that technology will allow for autonomous reversing? Because that is coming.
Is it?
Yeah. For our producer who refuses to reverse the car.
Yeah. I can't say ugly
can
words.
Reverse, he just chooses not to.
Yeah, that's the story.
It's an option. It's an option.
Yeah. It's an option.
The reverse button does not get used.
Rob, thank you so much for joining us for our wrap up and reflection back on the last couple of days.
Thank you.
Really good to see you, dude.
No. Well, all our partners that come to the event, and Capgemini have been awesome as well in so many customers. Pleasure to be here.
Thanks, man. Marcel, can we go home now?
I will bring you with a car to the airport.
Let's just hope you don't go home, or we don't go home like you arrived, Dave.
Oh, yes.
As just to tell everyone, as Dave arrived at the Airbnb house.
So I got there late, right? Because you guys were already there, and my flight had got delayed. And
his car that's bringing him in comes around the corner, literally on fire with smoke pouring out of the engine. Yeah. Actually, so he arrives, we come outside, and the car, just smoke bellowing out of the car.
I literally came in hot, Rob.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that doesn't happen this time, because
me too.
There was a massive clunking sound, you said, as it came around the corner, and clearly the car severely broke. It was like a proper breakdown.
It was literally as well. So it was about a 25-minute Uber ride from the airport to the
And when you got in it, did you not?
I mean, it looked like a bit of a clunky old Prius, but it didn't really occur to me that it was on death's door. And we're just driving. It didn't feel the smoothest car, but I wasn't really paying that much attention. It was just like lurched as it came around the corner to where the places that we're staying. And the guy had sort of he didn't park it. He just kind of
in the middle of the road,
in the middle of the road by the house. So
I came out and said, "Sir, do you know your car is on fire?"
Oh my God.
Actually, a true story.
What was your review on the Uber?
How many stars?
How many stars did you get? Was it like one of the?
I would have felt bad giving him anything less, because he looked distraught. Like he was not happy. It was like living going up in flames.
I felt bad for him.
And as we were driving off, Rob was like, should we wind down the window and go, you can't park there, mate.
Yeah, there you go.
But Dave, $35,000 for a ride from the airport to the house. That's a cheap one.
Jeez.
Right. So if you would like to discuss any of the issues on this week's AWS reInvent special, then please do get in touch with us at cloudrealities@capgemini.com. We're all on X and LinkedIn. We'd love to hear from you. So feel free to connect, DM, if you have any questions for us to tackle. And of course, please rate and subscribe to the podcast. It really helps improve the show. A huge thanks to Max, Erik, and Rob, our sound and editing wizards Ben and Louis, Marcel, our racing license owning but can't reverse park producer, and of course to all our listeners. See you in another reality next week.